The gentleman from California is recognized.
Madam Chairman, I'm pleased to recognize the gentleman from California, Dan Lungren, for 4 minutes.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank my ranking member, and Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this motion to instruct for the reasons articulated by the gentleman from California. But let me talk about another subject that is covered in this bill, and one that is of extreme importance. It goes to the question of how we handle those who are at Guantanamo at the present time. This issue has erupted around this country because people are beginning to understand the ramifications of closing Guantanamo and bringing people here to the United States whose only connection to the United States is that they were caught on the battlefield with the intention of killing Americans. Now, why is it important whether or not we keep Guantanamo open or whether we bring these people to the United States? We got a little bit of an insight into why it's important by the report by a colleague of ours, Mr. Rogers from Michigan, who, when he was in Afghanistan recently and visited our base there, and went to the prison there where we are holding people who we actually captured on the battlefield, he observed the fact that now we have FBI agents Mirandizing, that is giving Miranda rights statements to those we have found on the battlefield. In other words, Madam Speaker, what we have done is we have transposed the universe in which these people are being detained from one of a combat atmosphere to one of a criminal proceeding in the United States. Now, why is that important? It's important because this is happening for the first time in the history of the United States. We did not do this, obviously, during the Revolutionary War. We did not do it during any war we fought, not the Civil War, not World War I, not World War II. If we had followed this same thinking in World War II, our courts would have been overwhelmed. People forget we had 2 million POWs that we held during World War II. Over 400,000 of them in the United States. Was it thought that they had all of the rights under the Constitution? But this question has basically been treated by federal courts in the past with this perspective. The connection you have to the United States is what determines your coverage under the Constitution. That's why someone coming over the border illegally doesn't have the right to all of the constitutional protections, because the only connection to the United States is trying to get in illegally. Here we have people sitting at Guantanamo whose only connection to the United States is that we have reason to believe that they wanted to kill Americans anywhere in the world. And so now what we're saying is, if we take them from Guantanamo and put them in the United States, they have a connection to the United States. They were brought here involuntarily. And the legal arguments that for years have presented a barrier from them obtaining all constitutional rights, that barrier is pulled down. And so while this bill has language in it, this conference report, as it's being worked on, has language in it with respect to Guantanamo, I don't think we have focused in on what this means. Yes, there's a concern about the threat they may pose to Americans, and that arises out of the fact some say, well, they could escape from the prisons, and then we're told, oh, we've got these prisons they can't escape from. But it is more than that. It is they may be released at the direction of federal judges, and the only reason they would be released is that they somehow now have access to all of our constitutional rights. So the American people need to understand. We may have a president who says, no, we don't want to release them. We have an attorney general who testified, no, we're going to make sure that they're not released based on everything we do. Would the gentleman have a couple minutes?
Madam Chairman, I yield the gentleman 2 additional minutes.
The Attorney General can testify before our committee, as he did 2 weeks ago, that they're going to take all steps to make sure people aren't released in the United States who are suspected terrorists. They cannot promise that. Once they bring them to the United States, and the judgment of the federal courts is they are now under the protection of all constitutional rights, we no longer are talking about them as illegal enemy combatants who never before have gotten the protection of the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention in part says you will have these protections so long as you act under the laws that have been recognized for warfare. One of them is wear a uniform. One of them is don't attack innocent civilians as a particular strategy and tactic. And so what we're doing is we're turning it all upside down, and we're saying somehow we're protecting our values by doing something we have never done before. We are jeopardizing the national security interest of the United States. We are putting Americans, innocent Americans, at risk by doing this.
Gentlemen, would you
I would be happy to.
I very much